1,000.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our webinar. As you've heard me say week after week, the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, had a dream. And the dream was that Mashiach will come. And when Mashiach comes, there'll be no more war and no more suffering and no more sadness and no more sickness. Godliness will be absolutely revealed in this world. It'll be the most remarkable time. In order to achieve this, one of the things that the Rebbe did was he sent emissaries throughout the world. And each place has its particular challenge. In times gone by, I thought that America was the policeman of the world. You somehow felt comfortable that America had its act together and was looking out for everybody. But today, it seems to me, living in South Africa, that America's quite challenged at the moment. Our very special guest, Rabbi Abba Perlmutter, is from Long Beach, California, which sounds really exciting. But I understand it's one of the most diverse cities in the States, and it ranks number 13 in crime. So, Rabbi Perlmutter, welcome. But we'd like to hear from you a little bit about the States, a little bit about California, a little bit about your city, about the people there, the Jewish population. We want to hear about anti-Semitism. We want to hear about intermarriage. And most important of all, we want you to take us on a journey of your thoughts, some direction, some inspiration for these very challenging times. I'm going to ask you to speak for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and afterwards we'll ask you one or two questions. And please God, we should all be inspired, and please God, we should have the ultimate blessing, Mashiach.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Masinta. It's a pleasure and honor to be here with you. Just to let the folks know that myself and Rabbi Masinta, we go back many, many, many years. I got married in New York to a family by the name of Stock. Rabbi Masinta probably ate 7,000 meals at the Stock house. So I've got to know him very, very well. And that's an honor and a pleasure to be here with him. So let me run by you very quickly a little bit of who Abba Perlmutter is. Abba Perlmutter was born and raised in Montreal, Canada, to Holocaust survivor parents. My parents came after the war to Montreal. My mother was liberated from Auschwitz. My father had lost everybody in the war. They started a family in Montreal. There's me and my sister. When I was a little kid, and my father needed to send me to school, there were two yeshivas in Montreal. One was a Chabad school, and one was what we call a Litvish school, a yeshivish school. My father was befriended by some Chabadniks, so they said to him, "Why don't you send Abba to Chabad yeshiva?" My father didn't know. Okay, fine. He said to me he didn't realize that Chabad has an agenda, that they are soul stealers, that they're going to get you. So he said, sure, why not? My father was frum, he was Orthodox, my mother was too, but not Chabad. No intention of having a Chabad family. Certainly, if you had told him then that their son would become a shlich of the Rebbe, he would have grabbed me and ran away. But he put me in there, and a little while later, what do you know? I become bar mitzvah, I wear a black hat, and I start putting on Rabbeinu Tam's. I'm now a Lubavitcher, and I become a Lubavitcher. My father becomes a Lubavitcher, he goes to Farbrengens, etc., etc. So in all reality, I should not be a shliach of the Rebbe. I should not be an emissary of the Rebbe. But because of the dedication of the Chabadniks in Montreal that literally stole souls, they took my soul. They got my soul. And by me, I dragged my father in. And that's how I became a shliach, of the Rebbe. When I got married, we lived in New York for 1 year, which was then what everybody did. They went to Kollel, postgraduate studies. And my first job on shlichus was to Boston University. I was the Chabad rabbi at BU. And I'd like to stop here just for a moment to tell you an incredible story of the Rebbe. And we're talking about, miracles, whatever it is. This is a story, but the have of this happened to me. My first week in Boston, I organized an organizational meeting of students to help me form Chabad of Boston University. You had to be recognized by university to be able to do programs there. I got 15 students to come the first night, and I asked during the meeting who would like to be president of this Chabad club. And a fellow raised his hand. He was not my first choice. He didn't look like the type of guy that would help me. As a matter of fact, I was very, very suspicious what he was doing there for a number of reasons, which I will not go into. This was not my number one favorite, but since no one else did it, I had no choice, and I took this guy. Okay. Over time, slowly but surely, we became extremely close friends. He worked hard to my astonishment, not only did he not undermine me, but he worked hard for Chabad. He came to our minions. He brought other students to our minion. And more, he got involved in the Chabad house and became closer and closer. As a matter of fact, he became so close that he ultimately married a girl who became a Balas Tshuva in our Chabad house. And today they have 10 children and grandchildren, a beautiful, beautiful family. The story that he told me was a cold night in Boston. I still remember it clearly, sitting in the car with him. And he said to me, you want to know why that first night I raised my hand because to become the president? I'll tell you, Rabbi, why I did that. The reason why I did that was because years ago, my parents could not have any children. We're not Chabad. We're barely modern Orthodox, my parents. We could not have any children. There was a Rabbi Schusterman, that lived in Chicago. He advised them to write the Rebbe a letter. They wrote the Rebbe a letter, and the Rebbe said that if you should keep, et cetera, Taras HaMishpacha. Nothing happened for 6 months. They wrote again, and it was, make a long story short, the Rebbe said, hey, you know what? I told you first time, and the woman admitted that she did not keep Taras HaMishpacha, even though she agreed to it. Rabbi Schusterman said, well, let's not bother the Rebbe if you're not going to do it. She broke down and cried, and she started to go to the mikveh, and the guy's looking me in the eyes in the car in Boston, my friend, and he says to me, I am the product of that bracha. He says, I didn't grow up with Chabad. My parents did not send me to Chabad schools. But when you came into town and you put in the notice in a BU newspaper, Chabad is starting, I said, I owe the Rebbe something. So you could read a million stories in the books and great miracles of the Rebbe, but I'm telling you a story that happened to me in Boston University with a fellow that I know today. And Baruch Hashem, a beautiful, beautiful family that came out of a product of the Rebbe's brachas, and there just reiterated to me the importance of his kashrus, the importance of staying close to the Rebbe. I didn't stay very long in Boston. It was too cold for me and my family, so we spent about 8 years in Boston, and then we decided to move to Long Beach, California. I'd already been here as a head counselor in the day camp. So was my wife, the head counselor in the day camp, and we loved this community. We came here to Long Beach, California. Shortly after I came here, I became the head of the school. We have a school here, Hebrew Academy of Long Beach and Orange County, several hundred students. Just by means of the extraordinary circumstances, I ended up as a young man the head of the school. And the money situation, ladies and gentlemen, was very tough, very tough. A school is a tough institution. It's just, you're just pouring money constantly into it. Tuition was very hard to gather, and every day all I was doing was just literally going from bank to bank. I mean, borrowing from person and trying to give. It's crazy. So one kinnis hashluchim, this was in a year probably 1990, maybe 1989 or 1990. There was a kinnis hashluchim. I said to myself, I need to ask the Rebbe bracha, because the situation is just crazy. So, as many of you know, that for a number of years, the Rebbe on Sunday mornings, had the custom of standing and passing out dollars to the Hasidim and to people around the world. By the kinnis hashluchim, when the shluchim gathered, I said, I'm going to ask the Rebbe. I know I'm taking from the Rebbe's precious time, and I'm a nobody, but here I just have to gather up the strength, to do it. So, in the morning, early morning, I went to the mikvah, I davened hard. I said, please don't lose your courage. When you go past the Rebbe, just say it, just ask him for a bracha. You're not doing it for yourself. Kept reiterating my mind, said Tillim, and all that. My time came, and I didn't lose the courage. I bent over to the Rebbe and I whispered in his ear that the situation financially is very, very difficult in the school. And I'm asking the Rebbe's bracha for please to help us out. The Rebbe turned to me and he said to me, make sure that there's a pushka in every classroom, and Shem will take care of the rest. I felt like $1 million. I mean, first of all, I felt guilty taking the Rebbe's precious time, but thank God the Rebbe said that. I flew back to Long Beach. I made sure in each classroom on the wall inserted, there was a pushka in each classroom banged up against the wall. You couldn't remove it. And I understood from the Rebbe that basically what we're doing is we're opening up tzenoris, we're opening up channels of charity. If the children give to charity, this is going to rise up to Hashem. Hashem is going to see the children giving charity every day, tzedakah every day. And what's he going to do? Then to a guy like Perlmutter, when he goes out on the road, he's going to say, yes, I'm going to open up channels for you. In Baruch Hashem, we saw a lot of success afterwards. And this was one little story among tens of thousands of stories that happened during these times, by the dollars. But these were personal stories to me that happened. And we saw from then, Baruch Hashem, I didn't stay to school because I always thought of myself more as a community shliach, more of a rabbi type rather than running a school. I didn't really know how to run a school. So thank God my beloved colleague, Rabbi Newman, who runs the school and is really a top-notch educator, took over the school. And I started what we call Shul B'Dei Shor, an outreach shul here in Long Beach. California in general is a place of tremendous assimilation. People came to California not because they wanted to become more religious. You come here for the sun, the turf. You come here because it's a beautiful place. We have great weather. We have a beautiful ocean. We have the mountains for skiing. You got basically everything here in California. And Jews flocked here. There's about 1 million Jews living here in California right now. The intermarriage rate is 75 to 80%. I mean, when I find 2 Jewish kids are ready to get married, it's a miracle. Here in Long Beach, California itself, there's 25,000 Jews. We have 2 Chabad shuls. As I mentioned, my Shul B'Dei Shor, which is more of an outreach Chabad style, where most of the people, they say drive to shul on Shabbos. I don't see it, but because when they walk in the door, they're not driving. But they say, some people have told me that they drive to shul, they're not get Shemesh Shabbos. And then we have a kehillah, we have a little congregation here that has about 50 families, from an Lubavitcher community with a mikveh, with an erev, etc. There's no kosher restaurants. We have to travel up to Los Angeles to get, but the community itself is very, very assimilated. The biggest congregation here in Long Beach is the Reformed temple called Temple Israel. It has probably about 500 members, to it, but very, very assimilated. But Baruch Hashem, I have to say that in this particular town, the Rebbe gave unbelievable brachas to this community here in Long Beach. And I came late to the game. I came here in 1988. They've been around here since 1969, was the first shliach here. Rabbi Kunin, who was the regional director of Chabad, rolled in one day in town and met a doctor here, Dr. Moskowitz. He asked him for a few $100s for Chabad of Westwood, and Dr. Moskowitz looked at Rabbi Kunin and said, Rabbi Kunin, how much is it going to take to get a shliach to Long Beach? 1969. Rabbi Kunin said, office top is at $35,000. The Dr. Moskowitz said, you got it. When can you get him here? He said, we're starting Shabbos. This was Tuesday. Rabbi Kunin was sitting in Dr. Moskowitz's office on Tuesday, and he said, we're starting here Chabad on Shabbos. Dr. Moskowitz says, Rabbi Kunin, are you nuts or something? How? It's Tuesday. He says, I'm telling you, find a place. Your job is to find a place. I'll bring the minyan. And he schlepped down 10 people from Los Angeles. Dr. Moskowitz rented a little office on top of a bar. And for the first few weeks, Rabbi Kunin every weekend would schlep a bunch of guys, drive down here in Long Beach. He told me once that they had that they didn't have a 10th guy for a minyan. So downstairs was a bar. There was a Jewish drunk. So he schlepped up the Jewish drunk to make the minyan. So in 4 days, he opened up here in Long Beach, eventually bringing out of the first shliach who opened up the school. And the brachas, the families that we have seen here turned around, even in the most assimilated city. And as Long Beach with a very, very strong assimilation. Just to give you an idea, when Rabbi Kunin opened up, there was a very fancy furniture store down the block where the owner came to Rabbi Kunin, a Jewish man, and said to him, Rabbi Kunin, I'll give you $10,000 right now in 1969 if you move away from here. And Rabbi Kunin said to him, I'm guaranteeing you that we will be here longer than you will be. You are the one that's going to leave, not us. Because he was ashamed of the Hasidim. He was ashamed of the rabbis coming down here. It grew from one rabbi, now there's 12, 15 shluchim, here, and a big school, and this branched out to 27, 28 different centers, in Orange County and the brachas. But it's still challenging because, you got to get out there to the assimilated Jew who doesn't really appreciate Torah mitzvahs. got to convince them why they should send their child, to a frum school. We ourselves at the shul have a Hebrew school. That in itself is even a challenge to get the kids to come even for 2 hours a week, etc. But we see here tremendous brachas. I mean, the children of the Balei Tshuva here in Long Beach have married into the best and finest families in Lubavitch. It's an incredible thing. It's a mamish an incredible thing here, to see that your mamish living through, a renaissance. And I'll give you an example. Last year, the Reform rabbi came to me and asked me for a cipher because he wants to buy 10 pairs of tefillin. I said to him, why, Rabbi? Why do you want to buy? I get along very well with the rabbi. He said to me, he's starting a tefillin club. He's starting a tefillin club. This is a Temple Israel, a Reform temple. He is starting a tefillin club, there. I mean, it's amazing. And he only did it because he saw the success of the Rebbe's campaign on tefillin, where we go out on Mivtzayim and put tefillin on. And probably people came to him and said, Rabbi, what about us? Lama Nigara? How come we're not? So the rabbi decided he's going to start a tefillin club, there in Temple Israel. And Kahena v'Kahena, there's story after story after story here. California is a place where if you have to live in Golust, I'll tell you, this is about as good as you can get. I mean, you're sitting here in beautiful weather, 70-degree weather with all tainuge olam hazeh. But that's the problem. We want people, like I've always said, the job of a rabbi is twofold. One is to comfort the agitated. God forbid someone loses a loved one, we're there. Someone feeling bad, we're there. The other part of it is we have to agitate the comfortable. We got to go out to the world and say, hey, this is not what it's about, Chavre. It's great living here. It's wonderful. The sun is shining. Yes, we can go out. We can ski and swim on the same day. But this is not what it's about. What it's about is values, Torah mitzvahs. And, Baruch Hashem, we've seen successes. This job is still far from over. But we hope and pray that, Mashiach is going to come and he'll finish up the rest. As far as what's going on today with Corona, is California is a interesting an example. We were the first city to close down in America, not Long Beach. San Francisco, the governor was the first one to close down a city, San Francisco, early on, and then eventually everything else closed down. Okay, everything else closed down, and we for a long time, Pesach came and this, no minions. Then the numbers started to drop in California. The governor decided, you know what? Since there's numbers are dropping and it's going well, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's open up. So they opened up. They allowed shuls to open up, and then they allowed the bars to open up and restaurants, and everything started to open up. And all of a sudden, we are now in a spike at 10,000, maybe 8,000 cases a day, and then hospitalizations, et cetera, et cetera. The governor's now pulling back. The governor now has decided that, no. We opened up way too quickly. We are starting to pull back. So they've closed all of the restaurants again, outdoor seating only. They've closed the gyms. They've closed and schools. They've announced just last week that they are closed. Schools will only be online to start off with. That means you're not going to have in class, which is, to me, it's terrible because kids need other kids. But this is what they've announced. So it's a tremendous challenge, right now. We ourselves have a minyan going outside. My daughter has a home here and they have a huge backyard. So we've been able to continue our minyan Friday nights and Shabbos. And when we do it with social distancing. Everybody wears a mask. It's not very comfortable, but we've been able at least to do something to keep our community together. I myself have never been on the phone more than in the past few months. I call almost every member of the shul to find out on a weekly basis. I try to find out what's going on, how is it going, what's going, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the challenges of COVID here is unbelievable. It's even though I look outside the window, it looks like an Eden, but we're dealing with a tremendous challenge, which we hope and pray that Hashem, as quick as it came, as quick it should go out. Rabbi Masinta asked me to speak for about 25 minutes. So for the last 5 minutes, I just want to share a thought, because we're talking about the Rebbe. The Rebbe had such tremendous insight into, not only was he a tremendous genius and a Kabbalist and a Goen and everything, but the Rebbe did not live up in the skies. The Rebbe was firmly implanted right here, on earth, right here. He was also one of the most practical people that there were. When there was questions, of practicality, the Rebbe was right on. I mean, they tell a story about a gentleman who came to the Rebbe and asked him by dollars, did he ever hear of the segula? There's a good idea for shalom bayis, for peace in the home, if you fold your talus right after Shabbos. He said he saw in a book that if you fold your talus right after Shabbat, then it helps in shalom bayis. Rebbe said, I didn't hear that, but I do know that if you roll up your sleeves and do the dishes, that helps in shalom bayis. That helps. So the Rebbe was such a practical looking person that even though that he was able, to go to the depths of the Torah, the furthest, deepest concepts of the Torah, his feet were firmly planted here and understood people perfectly. So when it came to the concept of displacement, we're all displaced. I'm not in the same place that I was 4.5 months ago. 4.5 months ago, I'm a social animal. I mean, I go out there. I love to. I'm a people's person. I want to be together with people. I've been social distance for almost 5 months right now. The Rebbe writes about displacement. I'm not sure if you, Rabbi Masinta, shared with you, this thought, but the Rebbe in a letter, a letter that the Rebbe wrote among the 10,000 letters, that he wrote, the Rebbe has one about displacement. Maybe there's more, but there's one that I know of that's literally about displacement. As you know, the Rebbe from June of 1940 to June of 1941, you may know, the Rebbe was living in the south of France under the Vichy government in Nice. And at that time, the Rebbe felt completely displaced. I mean, he was living in Paris. And then, of course, the Nazis came in. He had to run. And eventually, he made his way to Lisbon, Portugal. And from Lisbon, Portugal, he sailed to New York. But during that period where he was living in Nice, in Vichy, he felt completely displaced. But as the Rebbe's position always was, there's always something positive to learn. He wrote a letter, which I'm going to read quite quickly. It's a very, very short, it's a short part of a letter. And he writes to this fellow, Mr. Fedmer, your letter awakened memories of the time that we were together in Vichy and Nice during that period of June 40-41, each of us living under conditions to which we were unaccustomed. A letter, and then he writes to him, sorry. He says, when a person is uprooted from their habitual environment until such time that they become accustomed to the new conditions and requirements, there come to light certain traits of their inner character as they are in their purity, undistorted by the expectations of society. So the Rebbe says, when you're alone, when you're forced to be alone in the house, whether it's with your family or maybe all alone, you understand that there are certain things that come to light inside of you, your inner character, that are pure. They're not forced. Often these traits reveal hidden virtues of the person, virtues that have been hidden even from themselves under the layers of manners and social conventions. In such cases, fortunate is the person who does not allow these traits to disappear when they subsequently settle down and find tranquility. So what the Rebbe is saying is that there is an advantage of being alone when you're discombobulated and you're displaced. All of a sudden, you are forced to look into yourself, and you find within yourself certain gems that you didn't know that about yourself, because you're outside and you're in community and there's expectations and there's peer pressure and all of these things. So you don't take the time to really think about it. But now that we're sequestered, now that we're in this quarantine situation, you find a beauty, a purity of character that you didn't see before. And then the Rebbe finishes by saying, fortunate, let me read that again, fortunate is the person who does not allow these traits. Now, very little did the Rebbe ever write about himself, but here he's talking about himself, that he found within himself certain things that he's going to take with. Fortunate is the person who does not allow these traits to disappear when they subsequently settle down and find tranquility. So during these few months that we have been, in this, what we call social distancing, we've been isolated. There are things that come to mind, that things that happened here that I would never think about before, such as, for example, I've learned to live with what I have. I happen to be, a sports fan. I like sports, baseball, basketball. My grandchildren and me, we bond over that. My in-law, my son-in-law's not so much. But my grandchildren and me, we bond over sports. There hasn't been sports in 4.5 months. I don't care. I could care less if they ever come back. I've learned that, you know what, I could live without it. There's more time to do more important things. Now, not to say that I'm going to promise that if baseball and basketball and hockey come back, I'm not going to watch a game. I probably will. But you know what? I've learned to live with what I have. I've learned to appreciate family. I've learned to appreciate friends. I've learned to appreciate. I am a hugger. When I come to the shul, I see a man, I see a friend of mine, I give him a hug. I've learned to appreciate the importance of a hug. I haven't been able to do that, in over 4 months. I've learned to appreciate small little details of like just playing marbles with my grandchildren in the backyard. I was not playing marbles with my grandchildren in the backyard, but these small things, small character things that come out, more time to learn, more time to read, more time to do things that are important. These are all consequences of our isolation. And I'm hoping, like the Rebbe writes in the letter, that when the time comes that we go back to the normal, I'm not going to forget about these things. I'm going to continue to do these things because they are of tremendous value that I would not have appreciated prior to this. And one last thing, and with this I will finish, is the Rebbe says about finding who you are. Imein anili mili. Hillel says that if I'm not for me, who am I? Doesn't mean it's an arrogant statement that I'm Imein anili mili. I have to be only for myself, a selfish person. No, he's talking about who are you really? What is the essence of you? Are you really doing the things that you are supposed to be doing? Are you finding yourself in an occupation that is compatible with who you are? What are you? Once you find out what you are, who you truly are, the gem, the diamond that Hashem made, then you go out. Then it says the second part of who I am. If I'm only for me, what am I? Then of course you can share, but that time can be taken in isolation, the Rebbe writes, and find the true essence of who you are. And then once you do that, don't lose it. Don't lose it. Use it and don't lose it. Thank you very much. I think Rabbi Masint at this time would like me to probably be quiet already. And it's already, I'm looking at my clock, it's 28 minutes. Here in California, we're not that particular about time because it's a laid-back society. But I know South Africa and Rabbi Masinta with his nice tie that he's wearing over there, and he's very, very proper. So I don't want to. Otherwise, he's going to stop the check. So I'm stopping.
That was very inspiring, very outstanding. Abba, I want to ask you one or two questions of you. Just
Please
first,
go ahead.
Just tell us a little bit about what's happening in America and what's happening politically.
Politically in America, we're a divide. I'm not a politician, and I say in our show there's a couple of things that we don't talk about. One of them is politics because it divides the show, and there's no winner in this. But in the United States of America, we are now a divided nation, divided maybe than we've ever been divided before, between the left and the right, between what's going on. The president is the president. Everybody knows about President Trump. There are people now who show that love him. There are people now show that hate him. The people who show that love him always talk about how great he is to Israel. The people that hate him say that, it's only political. He doesn't really care about Israel. He's a narcissistic fool, and we're going down the wrong path. So in our show, I try my best not to talk, because if you talk politics, you'll blow everything up. But if you read the paper, the left will always bash Trump. The right is always going to push Trump up. Very, very we're divided like I've never seen before. We also have now this racial issue that has come up in between and in betwixt this situation. I mean, again, everybody here has their own personal opinions as to what it is, why it is, and how much we get involved, not get involved. Of course, racism is wrong. I mean, the Torah is totally against racism. But many people feel that this is pushed even further, that you have to feel guilty, even if think that you're not a racist. You're still a racist because you're not feeling bad that you're a racist. So I don't know if we have to go that far, to feel that way. There are, of course, Jewish organizations that are bending over backwards to appeal. There is, in my feeling, a certain undertone in the Black Lives movement, Black Lives Matter movement. Not that the idea of Black Lives Matter. Of course, Black Lives Matter. Everybody's Black Lives Matter, but there is an undertone in Black Lives Matter, the movement, a little bit of undertone of anti-Semitism, where they've hooked up with the most radical, Islamists, and have inserted Israel. Now, what does Israel have to do with a completely internal situation here? What does Israel have to do with it? But somehow they found a way in. So right now we're in a very, very precarious, dangerous situation here in the United States of America. Like Rabbi Masinta said before, America was always the light unto the world. We always looked ourselves as the light unto the world. Right now, we don't look much of a light. We're hit tremendously hard by Corona, and we're hit tremendously hard by this internal feeling of completely disintegrating, over here. So we're at a challenge. We're at a tremendous challenge. Now, there are people that say that the coronavirus itself is becoming politicized. I can't speak to that because I don't know, because we live in a very, 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 very blue state. California is extremely liberal, very anti-Trump, very anti-Republican here in this state. So I cannot say to you wholeheartedly that everything that's being done by the governor and by the state legislator is completely above politics. I don't know. I'm not a politician, but I have this curious feeling that with everything closing down over and over again, there might be a little undertone. There might be. I'm not saying there is. There might be a little undertone that we're going to schlep this out till the election, which is in November. And if this can hurt Trump, no, good, fine. You know what? We close the schools, we'll close the schools. Now, I'm not saying they should be open. I'm just telling you what the events are on the ground. It's not the greatest time for the United States of America, right now, but we've been a country that has shown tremendous resolve, and hopefully we will once again do that. And but if Hashem intent was to cause this corona and everything else that's going on, for us to turn to him and plead with him, he's accomplished it. He's definitely accomplished it, because only Hashem now can turn around this situation. I don't think that, because we're so discombobulated about, even the doctors themselves have no clue what's going on. We have doctors in our show. Half of them are for shutting down. Half of them think this is a hoax. That whole thing with those drugs, which I'm afraid to pronounce. Half the doctors say it's good. Half the doctors say it's no good. Some people swear by it. Some people curse by it. Hashem has made it in such a way that we only have on him to rely on. So that's what we do. We daven every day, and we learn every day, and we get stuck every day with the hope and prayer that Hashem cleans us out. Because right now I don't see, between the two candidates, Donald Trump and then Biden, this doesn't look like, either of them is really going to be a tremendous leader. So the only leader that we're asking for is Mashiach Tzidkenu. That's the leader that we need now.
Well, beautiful, thank you. Just to end off with this, we're going now into the 9 days. I would like a thought from you on the 9 days, based on the Sikha from the Rebbe or something, and we'll end with that. If anybody has any questions, post, but that's going to be the last thought.
Absolutely. On Wednesday, we are celebrating Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh in general is a wonderful time. It's a bit of a yontif, we say Hallel, except when it comes to Av. When it comes to Av, Shulchan Aruch said, Mishnechnes Av mematim b'simcha. When Av comes in, we decrease in joy. Mematim b'simcha. Unlike Adar, which Mishnechnes Adar marbim b'simcha, we increase joy. Av, we tone down the joy. We know all of the different customs that we have. We don't buy new clothes. We don't launder our clothes. No wine, no meat. No going to weddings, no getting married. We know all of these things that we do, and then ultimately we fast. On Tisha B'Av. The Rebbe, of course, is Mr. Positive. There's hardly an issue that the Rebbe did not see a positive spin in it. So you come to yourself, okay, Rebbe, here's the challenge. It says in Shulchan Aruch, when Av comes in, you decrease joy. How are you going to put a spin on that, Rebbe? No way. Leave it up to the Lubavitch Rebbe. So how does he do it? He says like this. You're reading it wrong. If you read it like this, if someone wants to decrease the effects of Av, There's only one way, besimcha, with joy. Only a Lubavitcher Rebbe, only a Lubavitcher Rebbe could come up with something like this. If you want to decrease the effects of, what is the effects of? The effects of are sorrow, grief, despondency, melancholy. You want to decrease the effects of? There's only one way to do it, besimcha. Yes, you have to follow Shulchan Aruch, you have to follow the rules, but you do it with a glad heart. You say to yourself, you know what? Just like Hashem took down the Beis Hamikdash on Tisha B'Av twice in the year 586 before the Common Era, in the year 70 of the Common Era, Hashem promises that this day will one day be the happiest day. I believe it. I absolutely believe it. And the Rebbe says that's the way to approach the month of Av. Not melancholy and not despondency, because depression and sadness will drag you down. That evil inclination will take you so far down, you won't know what hit you. And the only way to counteract that is with joy. Davening with joy, saying Tehillim with joy, giving charity with joy, participating social media events, with joy. Joy will bring us up to a place that no mitzvah will bring us. So, ladies and gentlemen, we want to get it. We want to get away from the effects of the month of Av, the simcha. Do it with joy and gladness of heart. Think about the strength that we have. Think about that Hashem is watching over us, and He doesn't depart from us. He doesn't leave us. That we are connected with Him through body and soul, in mind and heart. And eventually, hopefully, this year, Mashiach is going to come, and the 9th of Av will be celebrated, not as a day of mourning, not as a day of destruction, but a day of jubilation and rejoicing with the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, with the third Beis Hamikdash. We'll all see you there. Californians and South Africans will join together in saying Hallel together with Mashiach.
Very uplifting, Abba. Thank you. Aaron, over to you.
My pleasure.
Rabbi Perlmutter, on behalf of Chabad of Zoom and all those that are listening, thank you so much for your time, stories, inspiration, and humor. It really was incredible.
I'm happy to do it. Thank you so much for having me. I wish you all the best. For you, it's probably good night. For me, the day is just starting, but all the best to you guys in South Africa.
Thank you.
Take care.
To all those who joined in to the Zoom, please see the country we're visiting next week.